Well, good afternoon, everyone, as we head into US trade on Wednesday, the 9th of August. Not a lot going on in markets over the course of the European session, probably likely to continue as we head towards CPI. Tomorrow, the Italian government out overnight suggesting that, or kind of cooling down fears of the banking sector with that windfall tax of 40% that we were alluding to yesterday, that will be capped at 0.1% of the bank's total assets. So whatever the tax limit is, if it's above 0.1% of total assets, they will not take too much off the banks and end up crippling them. Some market participants had thought it'd be up towards 0.5%, 0.1% max. So they've cooled some fears as to that as well. So European markets bounced back over the course of this morning, or of course last night into this morning, off the back of the government, or the Italian government, capping the windfall tax. Oil hits new highs as tighter supply offsets China demand concerns. So the output cuts from Saudi and Russia, have continued to prop up the oil market and continue to send oil higher, and oil being in that uptrend rejected off 80 and has continued over the course of today's European session. Well, we'll jump across to the grid and you can see not a great deal of clear direction across the board. You can see US equity futures were positive earlier on, but now have pulled back slightly. European equity futures higher off the back of that a bit of Italian news, but Asia Pacific equities still mixed. Commodities still, relatively flat to mixed. Oil slightly higher again, as alluded to, that uptrend continuing. The Canadian dollar has not followed suit, which is interesting. But bond yields mixed across the board. The dollar mixed. Japanese yen and Swiss franc are relatively strong. The euro higher across the board. Canadian dollar lower across the board. The strongest and the weakest currency over the course of today, but euro likely up slightly off the fact of that Italian government comments overnight. Apart from that, we've not got really much else to talk about as we look towards CPI tomorrow. I'll jump across to the calendar and have a quick look, and we can see on Wednesday there is nothing out of note this afternoon. Oil inventories, have a look at oil inventories now. Previous a draw of minus 17 million, which helped push oil higher. A consensus of a slight increase in oil inventories, which is likely to be negative for the price of oil, but that does not book the trend. That does not change the trend. If we jump in to these oil inventories, you can see the majority of them are draws and a decrease in the supply of oil, which has contributed to oil prices moving higher. So if that misses consensus and comes in substantially below zero, that is likely to prop up the price of oil, and oil is likely to continue its uptrend higher. Apart from that, no economic data today of note. Brings us into CPI tomorrow, which we will break down in tomorrow's video. We can see bond yields mixed. You can see the S&P slightly higher, then back lower. You can see gold, slightly lower over the course of this session, but struggling at these lows, failing to break these lows. Oil, as we've alluded to, has continued higher. Equity markets, choppy. You've had them up and then back down slightly across the S&P, the Dow, the Nasdaq, and the Russell, and they are still within recent ranges. As we mentioned this morning, selling the highs, buying the lows, probably the way to play it. That has been the way to play it over the course of this morning, but we've not really reached any sort of a high worthy of selling any of these, to be honest. So not a lot we can do across stock indexes at the moment. You can see the DAX, selling the highs, I suppose, and the DAX and the Euro stocks did work out pretty well. In terms of if you managed to profit off it, it's another question. They were obviously pretty aggressively higher off the back of that Italian news. Selling back into that, maybe a little bit tricky. But yeah, buying the highs, selling the highs, buying the lows has been the way to play it, and that will be the way to play it, or looks like it will be the way to play it as we head into CPI in tomorrow's session. You can see the US dollar pretty much the same. Aussie and Kiwi slightly higher, then slightly lower. You can see Euro dollar chopping sideways. Sterling slightly lower. There's an article back here pointing towards the UK's weak economy at the moment. Obviously, growth struggling in the UK at the moment, but that's just writing an article really, and it's just trapped in a range awaiting CPI. Tomorrow you can see dollar Swiss in its range, dollar yen in the range, dollar CAD popping back higher again, but oil's lower. a bit difficult to work out in terms of the price of the Canadian dollar. And the dollar index not really respecting any levels and chopping sideways in today's session. So a whole lot of nothing in today's European session, probably likely to continue into today's US session. So be careful. I would struggle to, go throwing money around in today's US session. Probably keep it in your pocket, await any clear moves, any clear drivers. And for now, it doesn't look like we have any. So all eyes on CPI tomorrow, should I say, and we will update further on that as and when we come to it.